Well, good afternoon, everybody. Very welcome to the Doctor of Business Administration talk. I'm just giving you some general information about the course. So I'm Dr. Owen Plant. I am the course leader for the DBA, and I'm here with my colleague, Professor Catherine Farrell.
And I look after the public service aspect of the doctorate.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to talk to you about the aims of the course, some general aspects as well. You're able to post some questions, so we'll hopefully have some questions and get to them in a couple of moments' time. So firstly, we're just going to talk about the aim of the DBA and the course. So DBAs, I suppose, have developed over the last 10 to 15 years as professional doctorates. And I suppose most people are used to doctorates as the PhD. But the aim of the DBA is looking at the professional nature of people based in many different types of organizations, public sector, private sector. And partly it's got to do with developing, I suppose, evidence-based decision-making, being a competent researcher, and the benefits that will have to the organization, the decision-making of the organization, whether it's efficiency, effectiveness, across the many different types of organization.
Okay, I suppose when we think of doctorates, we think of the traditional PhD, where the student is very much on their own for a period of 6 years, part-time usually. And unlike that, the doctorate in business administration is delivered to people who are part-time, who are busy professionals working in the various sectors, as Owen has mentioned, including the third sector as well. And the idea is really that they come together, they reflect on management practice, they reflect on leadership practice, and they use this to improve their general working lives within the services that they deliver.
Mm-hmm. And as well as other employer feedback and student feedback, it's not only about the individual, but they can be a catalyst in the organization, that they can spread this approach within the organization as a core point. So it's not only benefits for the individual, but benefits for the organization, benefits for the employer to have someone with these skills and abilities in the organization.
Doctorate qualifications go much further than masters do, in the sense that masters enable students or enable participants to reflect on management learning. But with a doctorate, it's much more analytical and much more professionally based to improve business and public sector practice.
Mm-hmm. If we talk to you a little bit around the course structure and how it differs as well to a PhD. So in this respect, we have a structured doctorate in many ways. So there are 5 modules on this doctorate program. You do start on your research from day one. You're required to submit a research proposal as part of the application process itself. In terms of the 5 modules, they actually linked somewhat to in each individual chapter of your thesis itself. So module 1, which I look after, is pretty much developing the doctoral research proposal itself. You'll have a 6,000 to 7,000 word assignment associated with that module. You'll have 6 months to complete it. And actually, when that's complete, it pretty much becomes your draft chapter 1 of your thesis itself. So it works in a similar fashion. You've that structured element for about 3.5 years. Module 2 is a literature review, which takes about a year in length. You'll have to attend university, but every 6 months for a 2 to 3 day session, where it's like a process of engagement with research and academic staff. So it's not like your normal traditional taught course where you have lots of PowerPoints and learning aspects, but it's more about different researchers coming in and exposing you to different ideas and processes that might be valid for your own research.
And right from the very start of the doctorate, what we aim to do and what we do over the first weekend is we place you with your 2 supervisors, who are likely then to be the people who you will be working with on a regular basis throughout the doctorate qualification. So as well as having the module leaders for the 5 modules, you will be working closely with your supervisors. And actually, although you'll come to the university perhaps once every 6 months for the taught elements and for return days, you will actually be liaising with your tutors regularly. So probably, fortnightly or monthly contact, depending on what aspect of the chapters you're working on at that time.
So it's mainly a part-time doctorate. We've many professionals from public, private sector, UK-based, international-based, and the course structure usually facilitates business professionals who can only travel at certain periods of the year, or maybe for a couple of times a year. So it's specifically designed for those professionals and their nature. So once you finish the structured element, 3.5 years, you'll have pretty much a draft piece body of work for your thesis. You might take about 6 months or so then or maybe a year, depending on much time you have to dedicate to the research, to rework it, revisit it, make sure it's all flowing, and then you submit it for your viva. So not like a normal traditional PhD, you'll have the oral defense of your thesis, as well as the submission, of course, for the external examiners itself. So compared to a full-time traditional doctorate, the part-time DBA is not far off in terms of the time scale it would actually take for a full-time doctorate. Full-time doctorate might take 3.5 to 4.5 years. So as a part-time DBA student, you could actually fulfill your career obligations, as well as complete your doctoral studies within a similar time frame, actually. So it's actually really good in terms of the effort and return on time that you would need to complete your doctorate.
A very unique aspect of this course is that we build it up module by module, but actually at a particular point you've really got chapters of your thesis already in place as you go through the whole process, so that you reach the end of the 3.5 year sort of taught aspect, and that you've got those draft chapters in place. But not only that, you've actually had credits for those modules as well, so that at any point, you know, if things change with you in your life, for example, you've still got those credits, which will be M-level master's credits, doctorate level credits, which you can then use towards a qualification if you didn't then go on to your doctorate. So you're building up credits as you're going through your course.
So after completing, yes, the first 2 modules, if something changed for some reason, you needed to suspend or withdraw from the program, you could exit with a master's in management research. And if you wish, you could potentially return within a certain period of time to complete your doctoral level studies. So all of these support mechanisms are in place as well to help you through the process. Because 3.5, 4.5 years is a substantial amount of time, and things change in people's personal lives. So we have the mechanisms in place to help you through those different processes.
Okay. Should we take some of the questions? Other questions?
Do we have this?
Do we just select this to do that?
Okay, so the question is it a new program? At the University of South Wales, we've been running this for probably over 10 years now, so we've learned a lot and changed the program substantially. And compared to traditional doctorates, it would be relatively new because they're hundreds of years, and this has been at the forefront for maybe the last 15 years itself. So we structured it differently, and we structured it from an approach that you start in your research from day one, really, and that allows you to try and fast track the research, and you're applying it. So you're not going off and learning A, B, C, and D, and then approaching your research 2 or 3 years later. You're applying it as you go through the process itself. Okay, so it's pretty much that question done.
Yeah.
Okay, so in relation to the students and the different areas, I do many different types of research. For example, my area is supply chain management and logistics, and public procurement just comes into that in some regards as well. So we've quite a lot of people in that areas with people in NHS, so it can be a mixture of business and health science. It could be in terms of education management as well. So the DBA is not just restricted necessarily to private sector organisations, but in terms of really management and organisational studies across many different sectors and many different fields itself.
Ideally, what we aim to do is recruit a group of people who come from a range of different backgrounds, and in every single module they will be reflecting on the context of their organisations, and through the negotiations with the tutors, but also the group of participants themselves will be working through the context of organisations and how, if a particular individual has an issue with leadership in their organisation, there will be others in the group who will guide that person to perhaps a literature that they hadn't found. So right through the qualification, there will be a lot of reflection from individual students and participants on the programs themselves, as well as with the tutors and the supervisors.
And the peer support is really important, the key area when it comes to the DBA. So in terms of the PhD, you normally go off and you research, and it can be quite lonesome. You always have that peer support and the group support where people are going through different challenges, and to hear other people's challenges and how they overcome them is one of the great mechanisms when it comes to the DBA. Also, we tend to mix different groups, so you might have people on Module 1, and people who are on Module 5, people on the write-up session, and we try to mix them up over lunch so they interact together and they discuss the issues and how they overcome those different issues. Alongside that, as Catherine said, that your tutor support and your supervisor support as well.
We also, it's about an education and gaining an educational qualification, but the social aspect is very important. And as Owen has outlined, we get the groups together during the days around the lunch breaks, but we also aim to do something in the evenings with the groups so that it's not just a qualification, and that we encourage the networking between the groups, which is a very important part of reflecting on learning and reflecting on professional practice as well.
Also a question, can payments be staggered? Yes, you can actually do that. In terms of staggering payments. So let me just click on that one. So yes, can payments actually be staggered? Yes, they can actually be staggered. There is a slight difference between if you're an international student or a home EU student, for example, when it comes to that. But in terms of when going through the application process, we'd be able to advise you with our finance unit or money unit in terms of what the aspects are when it comes to the staggering of payments itself. Okay, so in terms of maybe looking at the application process, so the application process is slightly different to a normal postgraduate application. So you'll have your normal online application, you submit, if you did a master's, for example, the transcripts of results, your academic references, your personal statement, other details as well. But we do also require a research proposal, usually maybe 4 or 5 pages research proposal, and I'm something I can happily help you with, providing you with a sample research proposal or giving you some feedback of what's essential to that. So we're looking for evidence that you can research at doctoral level, and there's potential in your research project to be a doctoral level project itself. So we're going to be looking for critical elements around, is there potential for contribution to knowledge there? And is there potential then also, because it's a DBA, it's contribution to practice as well as contribution to knowledge. So your proposal will need to look for a couple of those core elements. We're not looking for something that's very intense and very in-depth, because we understand a lot of people who start a DBA have been practitioners for quite a number of years, and they do have to get back into the academic swing of things. And Module 1 will take the proposal to the next step, to look at more about looking at the literature, where's the gap in knowledge, what's the current understanding around that particular field, and what's the advancement that you're going to bring to that as well. So it's not just like Masters about an evaluation or about an assessment, it's about the novelty and the originality and a significant piece of research there.
So obviously in that research proposal, we're not looking for the finished product, but we're looking for something that you can engage with. We want to see that you're interested in that topic, and obviously that it's something that can be done. When the proposal comes into us, Owen or myself will look at it, or a colleague within the particular field of expertise, and we would ask ourselves or a colleague to say, well, is this up to the right standard? Do we think that this proposal would be accepted, and is there a doctorate in this application? So we then will review that and obviously get back to you with that kind of information.
Mm-hmm. So the application, the process internally here, it takes probably about a month. So as Catherine said, the proposal will go to 2 academic members of staff to review it, and whether they feel it's appropriate, maybe some feedback, additional work will be needed on that, and we're more than happy to help you with that and provide you with that particular type of feedback itself, and potentially link you potentially to an academic as well, in that area that can help you with that particular feedback and process, who might be potentially then your supervisors as things progress.
Okay. What other aspects have we to?
Other aspects, because we have a delivery schedule, is usually a Thursday, Friday, and a half day, and a Saturday, twice per year. We can help you with accommodation. We have an accommodation unit on campus. They can help you with accommodation on campus or locally. If you're an international student, for example, that might help you to stay locally for a few days that the sessions are delivered. It is a part-time course, and international students might be interested in the visa requirements. You can come to the UK and study as a visiting student visa for a part-time course itself. So as a result of that, you would need to obviously apply to the British Embassy in your local city or country to apply for that student visa aspect itself. But we do have students Middle East, South Africa, so it's not an issue. It's just about making sure that you're well planned ahead for that process.
We deliver the course on the Treforest campus, which is in Pontypridd, and we deliver in our specialist postgraduate centre, where we have a range of facilities available for participants during the programme, but it is really a centre where we have facilities for postgraduate students. We do aim to mix the group, so we have home students who are working in local organisations within South Wales and beyond with the international group, and we see that as being very beneficial for the programme.
It gives a mixed nature to the discussion and debate that happens in the classroom environment, so it's really good. Just one or two other questions here I'm going to click on. And one of the questions is in relation to how senior a role do you need to have, or is it best to have complete the course? So senior management executive, chief executive. We do look for a number of years management experience. So it's somewhere in the middle management, the senior management tends to be the nature. So people come from different backgrounds. Some are director level, and some are a middle management level itself. So we're looking for a number of years experience in the management role itself, and it can be a varied number of roles. Some of the reasons for that. Okay, you get the practical experience, and then you get to know about the contribution to practice, and also gives you access, I suppose, to different angles within the organisation. You will have to have access to organisations to complete the primary research element of the studies itself.
Yeah. So what's really important is the interest in the subject, even more than the level within the organisation. It's the interest in the subject and actually being able to sustain that over the 3 or 4 or 5 years that it's going to take to complete the studies.
And one other question is in relation to IELTS. So as an international student, maybe English not being your first language, or if you haven't studied a master's, let's say, at English, you would require IELTS. IELTS is normally required at 6.5 for postgraduate studies, so that's across the board. There's probably a minimum for each of the individual criteria. I'm not 100% sure on that. But we can obviously check that for you with the international office itself. So it would require, if English is not your first language, you would require IELTS of 6.5 to study on the DBA. Okay.
So numbers in the group. Ideally, I suppose, in any student group, we'd ideally like between 10 and 15, 18 participants on each group to really get the reflective practitioner area going on, to get the participants to mix completely and to consider their topics and to reflect on each other's study area. And right throughout the course, you will make a number of presentations to the group about your work, whether that is the method you've chosen, the approach you're using, and really the findings that you're getting out of your research as well. So a number of presentations to the group, as well as the module delivery, which is all about the member of staff reflecting on that aspect of the project, whether it's the methodology or the literature review or the analysis chapter.
And that, excuse me, that peer support is really good, and that presentations, showing your development, showing your questions and other aspects there as well. So that's really a key aspect to it, and it really is helpful to have that peer support, have that question, have that feedback, and to be honest with I suppose your audience as well, because everyone suffers challenges, and I think people at doctoral level can really appreciate the challenges that actually happen, and it can be challenging but very, very rewarding. And when you think about you're actually shaping the field of your study, you're progressing things forward, you're progressing the organisation as well that you work for. Also to link to the fees aspect, so many of the fees are paid either privately, or in many cases employers do pay the fees if you link it to a particular type of project. that they want completed that will benefit them. So maybe they don't have to spend some money on it or some other consultancy aspect, but they can do it through this way and actually keeping the knowledge in-house in the organisation, which is important that when you look to other aspects such as consultancy, they don't retain the knowledge necessarily in the organisation, but something like a doctorate, a professional doctorate, and this level of project. And as I said earlier on, could be a catalyst because it can be something that can be led to and spread that knowledge throughout the organisation and the decision making within the organisation.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be said that a doctorate qualification is not an easy qualification to do, and that's got to be said. But actually, not everybody has a doctorate, and that's because it's a hard qualification, but a very rewarding one. And maybe what we haven't sort of talked about really is the fun there is in doing a doctorate, and your life, in a sense, is very different over the time period you're doing it, but will change the way you think, change the way you do things, and actually makes you much more analytical in your job and in other aspects of your life. So it's a very rewarding qualification. Not everybody has a doctorate, and lots of people want one. Actually, the title to be a doctor, and it's a very rewarding qualification to have.
Our focus groups has really concentrated on that, and they've expressed it's challenging but very enjoyable experience, and the people that they network with now and the links that they've actually created informally and more formally also has been great. So it's been a really good experience, and the focus group really comes back with an enjoyable experience and very, very rewarding on that graduation day to be called Doctor such and such, and congratulations itself when you walk across the stage.
We have some more questions here as well. Should we click on that one?
Okay. So we have a question, can I study 30 weeks course in English? There probably would be the opportunity to study a foundation English course to bring your IELTS level up. They're more orientated on campus for full-time students, where if you're doing a DBA, you'd be doing a part-time course. So there probably is the opportunity to do that, but you might be better off doing IELTS if you're going to be an international student, looking at the English language in your home country, and do it that way might be more convenient for you.
Yeah.
Let's say in terms of accommodation and cost and travel might be the better option.
Okay. The cost. So this one about the MBA credits for MBA students. No?
Oh, okay. So another question, any credits for MBA qualified students? The minimum entry requirements is normally a master's, so you wouldn't actually get any exemptions associated with an MBA. The far majority, if not all of them, of the students on a DBA already have a master's qualification. So that's linked more to the minimum entry requirements. So unfortunately, no, you wouldn't have exemptions. Also linking to the structure of the course, because you start to research from day one on the research proposal and working through that and working through literature review. It's not like the structure of a normal course in terms of like a master's that you would have previously done. So you can't miss really module 1 and module 2 because they're essential parts of the research that you need to undertake, aims and objectives, and then do literature, research methodology, analysis, your discussion, your conclusions. So they logically flow, so it's very difficult to give you an exemption because you're going to have a big hole pretty much, and it won't fit in terms of developing your thesis.
It's fair to say that some people who've undertaken master's qualifications actually do use the topic that they've studied for their dissertation as part of maybe continued research, and they use that then for their doctorate. And I suppose in a sense all master's qualifications are going to be relevant for studying at doctorate level because they sort of have developed already some of your analytical and academic skills. So that background is important. And I think from day one, some people would use that topic area as the springboard to use for the doctorate topic area. So that's a useful background, I think. But in itself, it doesn't give you the credits.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So okay, just another question. So the question again is another question about cost. So what is the cost? So the tuition fees for home and EU students are £7,725 per year for 3 years, and then a write-up fee of £1,030. For international students, it's £9,270 per year for 3 years, and then again at year 4, write-up fee of £1,030. So that's the tuition fees. Obviously, then there might be expenses such as travel expenses and accommodation expenses that are not included in that. But in terms of, you'll have lots of access to academic journals, electronic resources, which is normal part of the process of being registered at the University of South Wales.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't really mentioned the electronic resources that, you know, whether you don't really need to come on campus to access the library here. A lot of the resources, or all of the resources, are online. So, you know, you can be studying in another country, or you can be studying in South Wales in your own place of work, in fact, and access an online resources, journals, which are all useful for your studies here. So all of those academic materials are online on your computer, and in fact the whole library is there on your computer should you choose to use it. So it's really important that you know that the library and other resources are, you know, accessible to you wherever you are.
Also, I suppose it's important to know that if you need access to local libraries, we do have a system to our own library that can gain you access if you needed a quiet study space to run away from the family and kids or something like that, and to get some work done. So we can help you along those lines as well. So we're very well set up in terms of, I suppose, remote and distant learning aspects as well as having the interactive approach of your 2 to 3 day sessions every 6 months here at the Treforest campus.
And with the supervision obviously over the period of the project, you can, you know, discuss with your tutors via Skype or other FaceTime, and all of these things are useful for talking to your supervisors regularly, whether that's through discussing the chapters or what you should do next, or what the next part of your project is about, but actually it's about touching base with supervisors regularly. So there's lots of different ways of doing this.
Okay, so just 1 or 2 more questions we'll have a look at. Okay, just coming up on screen.
The length of a typical doctorate dissertation. I think it's 80,000 words is a typical doctorate dissertation. And one of the things that obviously we do right from the start is that we build the first assignment, or the first module. You complete an assessment for that, which will be the introduction to your thesis. You'll then do the second assignment, which is the literature review, and each of these have a word limit attached, and Owen is going to tell me what that is.
It's about 25,000 words for the literature review. But you do have about 1 year to complete that. So it's 80,000 words, seems like a lot, but usually the trouble is keeping it within 80,000 words.
It's actually in building blocks. So you'll have done, you know, 10,000 for your first assignment, for example, 25 for the second, another 10 for the third. So you get it builds up over the years. The difficult thing is deciding what to leave out, not how to get to 80,000 words. It's very easy to, in fact, get to 80,000 words. So don't let that put you off at all.
Yes, well, by the time you get to the 3.5 years of the structured element, you'll have plenty of words, more than 80,000 in place. So that's usually not usually an issue, but it does sound like a big volume of work. But yeah, it's important.
Okay. There aren't any other questions there, are there?
So one of the questions: can I get a discount on Apple products?
We'd like it as well.
That would be very nice. I don't know if there are discounts for
students. Get a discount, I think 10% on Apple products. I think they have to show evidence that they are a student. But when I've been in that particular shop recently, not advertising any product or anything, but when I've been in that shop, they've offered people who work in particular sectors, in fact the health sector or the education sector, and I think students in general will get 10% off. So there are discounts if you approach particular retailers for that.
Oh, so your student card will be well worth the money then if you get a nice discount in the Apple stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think there are any other questions. Is there anything that we need to think about in terms of the list we set out initially?
I think that's mainly it. We've covered some of the main aspects and main areas.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other advantages to doing module by module is if something happened and you had to drop out of a particular stage, you could then fall back into the year group who were, say, coming behind you, and that's something a number of people whose maybe job had changed, and then they felt that for that year they couldn't commit that amount of time. But what they've done is they've joined the group who are coming behind them. So that's a useful thing for people to know and reassure themselves about. So
yeah, the supportive mechanisms are in place to support you to get through this research process and have, you know, a very successful career as a result of that, whether in private sector, public sector, or maybe move to academia, for example. So our graduates have been across the board really in many different aspects, and we look forward to having more of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so well, thank you all for listening and for your questions. It was nice for you to join us today, and we hope that you found it valuable and interesting. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.